You should have just gotten that notification that recording is in progress. And then that'll be up on our YouTube channel and our 48th Ward blog in within the week, and I'll link to both of those in the chat throughout the meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Give me just a moment. All right, can everybody see my presentation?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so welcome to our April 1st Ward Night, everybody. Thank you so much for being here, especially after we weren't here on the 15th because of our wonderful participatory budgeting schedule. So I'm just going to go through the community agreements very quickly. If you've been to one of our meetings before, you've seen these. We're asking that everybody be present, be compassionate, be generous, and be brave. So there will be times to ask questions, to share your opinions, to speak, and times to let others speak. Please remember to keep your mic muted when you're not speaking. And oh, hold on, I just heard my headphones give out. Can folks still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'll switch my headphones in just a moment. But yeah, the only other thing that I will mention is that if folks join with their phone number as their name, we do like to shorten their phone number to the last 4 digits for your privacy. So if I change your name, that's why. And you can see our agenda here. And so that's about it for housekeeping. Keep an eye on the chat as we're going, because I'll be sharing relevant links and resources that we're bringing up there as well. And with that, I am going to pass it over to the Alderwoman and work on switching out my headphones.
Thank you, Audrey. Audrey is always on top of all the announcements that we need to give to you every week, every day, through our many channels, including our website, our blog, our social media, our newsletter that we send out. And in fact, maybe we could put that into the chat. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to the newsletter, because it's really the best way to find out what's going on in the ward and what's coming up in the future. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for our biweekly ward nights. And we just left a special meeting at City Hall, which I would like to update you later in the call. But first, I'm very excited and very grateful to have a representative from the Department of Planning and Development, Tim Jeffries, here to talk about the bonds program that is up for another hearing, possibly, and then up for a vote in City Council. And this is going to be an important initiative that we have not done in Chicago ever. And also we are sunsetting a major source of our funding for all of the capital improvements that we have been doing across Chicago for a very long time. So I'm very grateful for Tim to be here. Please stay, because after Tim gives an update, he's going to take some questions. We're also going to hear from Lieutenant Magno from the Chicago Police Department about public safety in the ward, and then we'll leave it open for Q&A for you to ask any questions of me or anybody here until 6 o'clock. So thank you for being here, and from there I will pass it on to Tim. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Hi, Tim Jeffries. I'm the Managing Deputy Commissioner in the Department of Planning, and I have been working on this with a lot of people, but I'm also a colleague in the Department of Housing, Daniel Hertz, who can't be here tonight, but I'll walk us through this presentation. Just at a high level, what this is, and you might have read about this, it's gotten some media coverage, is that DPD and DOH are both recommending and requesting the approval of a 5-year, $1.25 billion bond issuance. That's $250 million a year over 5 years, with that money split evenly between $125 to DOH, $125 to DPD. that will allow us as a city really to keep making investments in both affordable housing and community development projects. We do this today. This is work that we do today, but for reasons that I'll describe in this presentation, there's a number of very real structural declines in the funding sources that we have to be able to do that work that represent like a serious necessity for this to happen. But that's this necessity doesn't come without opportunity, because there's a lot of reasons that we should want to do this. And that if we, but without a change regardless, we will have a significant and steep decline in the amount of investments the city can make in projects like this. And it's also not lost on me that $1.25 billion is a huge number. But this proposal that I'll go through can all be done without a tax increase. No change to the levy. There's no fines nor fees nor any gimmicks. It's just the city has funds available that's coming back to the city from TIF districts that are expiring, and we can rely on these dollars to move forward. So go to the next slide. I guess 1.25 billion is just the question everyone asks. So I'm putting it at the front is, how will this money be used? So this is how DOH will spend it. I think if it's broken up into 3 big buckets. That first one is affordable rental housing. This is the work that DOH is heavily engaged in today in order to develop rental buildings that have affordable housing in them. There's a number of them in the 48th ward already. There will continue to be more in the city with these programs typically leverage low income housing tax credits in order to build capital stacks and to fund these projects. But the DOH is also going to be exploring new ways of funding projects, particularly with the social housing revolving fund. This involves making low cost loans to projects rather than having those projects invest high cost equity from the private market. And in exchange, the city gets affordability. This is in America, at least. This is a model. It's oftentimes called MoCo, or Montgomery County, Maryland. But it is the way that a lot of countries in Europe, including Vienna, Austria rather, have been funding affordable housing for decades. There'll also be allocations towards home ownerships and homelessness, particularly for SRO preservation. We can go ahead to the next slide there. On the DPD side of things, the largest single allocation is going to be for these what we call community development grants. They're investments that the city makes in things like commercial and industrial real estate developments. There's 3 flavors of it: small, medium, and large. Small for under $250,000 in city funds for like very small, usually locally based businesses. Up to $5 million for projects that are more corridor scale in nature, where it's a larger building in the corridor, but not quite as big as large, which is above $5 million, which is really like big catalytic projects that have a real impact on the corridor as a whole. In addition to that, we're going to be doing small business capacity building, finding ways to address access to capital challenges that we know exist throughout the city, as well as pre-development grants, funds that allow the city to step in and make small, I don't want to call them bets, but small investments into projects that we get a lot of ideas that aren't necessarily yet projects, and it costs money to make it into a real project. So this would help address that. And finally, we have workforce and training grants for businesses, as well as this missing middle infill strategy, basically new housing in areas that aren't deeply affordable, but also just generally accessible to the public at large. You can go to the next slide. In total, this does represent a rather significant investment in the city of Chicago as a whole. It would mean more than 5,500 new and improved homes, as well as 540 new businesses throughout the city. And the $1.25 million would be leveraged in order to realize $1.75 million in non-city funding. So $3 billion of investment over the next 5 years across the entire city as a whole. So that's what it is. And so, but why we're doing it, one of the big things is right now today, as things stand, is that the city uses tax increment financing, or TIF, as our #1 source of funds. Just for context, over the last 4 years, the total allocation going to both of our departments on a combined basis was more than $300 million per year. But most of these districts were designated in the mid to late 90s or early 2000s, when we had under the Daley administration, and a lot of them are coming up on their expiration dates, meaning they will no longer exist. There's 19 expiring before the end of this year alone, and then within the next 4 years, there's going to be 45 total districts expiring. This represents just a very, very significant sea change for how the city funds and approaches these kinds of projects. Just for context, those 45 districts, they generate something like $330 million a year right now today. So we will lose the cities from the program as a whole. The city will lose its entire allocation of funding that we use for that work today. Also problematic is that when a TIF district expires, the geography goes away. It's, the way that TIF functions is that TIF funds are generated in an area, and then funds have to be used in that area and only in that area. But when it goes away, there's just no more money left over for these districts. And if you go to the next slide, you can see the map of what that looks like. Any of the TIFs, or the geographies in the dark red map, those are the 45 that are going to expire in the next 4 years. The lighter shade of red will expire the next 4 years after that, and the dark blues will remain in place for at least 9 years or longer. And there's things that we can do to extend these TIF districts with state legislation. We have too many expiring to extend them all, just based on historic precedent and what the state has and hasn't allowed us to do. But that's ultimately not the solution in the big picture anyway, because TIF has done a lot of good across the entire city. It is also a flawed tool. First and foremost is that it is inherently inequitable. The TIF districts function in a way that the places that have the highest property tax bases and therefore need the funds the least generate the most amount of money. So you have a dynamic where the TIF district that includes City Hall is called LaSalle Central. It generates $180 million a year. But then you have a TIF district like 107th and Halsted down on the far southwest side, or Avalon Park South Shore on 79th Street and the South Shore neighborhood. Those TIF districts generate $400,000 and $700,000 per year. It's really not enough money to make the kind of like impactful investment that will stop the cycle of disinvestment in many of these neighborhoods. Additionally, the way that the TIF Act is written at the state level, and what the act or the law that says what the city can and can't do is a state level law, is really inflexible. The classic example that we usually give is that we're not allowed to construct new vertical construction using TIF funds. And that's obviously a huge problem because it just limits our opportunity. We could have a project where the department is in support, the community is in support, and the ward office is in support, and we aren't able to do it simply because of this act. I'm sorry, 1 second. I'll be right back. I just need to do one thing. Apologize for that. You can finally, we also have geographies with the TIF program that often feel irrational. They feel, if you look at the map, I know it's small, but you can see they almost look gerrymandered in a way. So you get situations where have a business on a corridor, and the business on the east side of the street they can participate in the TIF program, but the one on the west side can't. And there's no rhyme or reason for that other than that's the way it was drawn 24 years ago. So it can often feel unfair. If you go to the next slide. So in order to address these issues that I've been talking about, both the structural decline of funds as well as all of the issues associated with the TIF program itself, DPD and DOH believe that these bond funds are the best path forward and the best option for the city. And I'll stress that this is not some sort of like new or bleeding edge policy innovation that the city is pursuing. If you define a city a peer of the city of Chicago by virtually any metric, New York, Los Angeles, Seattle, you'll find that they are utilizing bonds for the kinds of activities that we're doing today. Additionally, the city has actually used bond funds over the last 3 years through the recovery plan. And there's been some really excellent projects and some really positive outcomes that have happened because of that. And that's all just to say that this is the best practice, both nationally and both locally. And we've shown that the city can deploy funds on an equitable manner, an effective manner, and do it in a responsible way to protect taxpayer dollars. And in many ways, as I said, it's like we need to do this because the city's bond funds are exhausted from the recovery plan program. And that was a short-term bridge for us, but we're entering a period where that bridge just no longer exists. And without a source of revenue to pay for these kind of projects, our output will significantly drop. Yeah, next slide. This is in many ways the most important slide, and one little bit of it got messed up. I can send the deck to the ward office, and maybe they can distribute it. But there should be a red line on that chart. This is just, the chart is meant to show that this proposal can be done without an increase to property taxes. And the way that happens is that since we have so many TIF districts expiring, when they do expire, what happens to the revenue generated in those districts is they go back to the taxing bodies per their share of the levy as a whole. So for the city, that means about 22%. And they do so in a way that results in a new persistent source of funds over on an annual basis. I mean, that does not require an increase to the property taxes as a whole. So what this proposal functionally does is suggest that as that money comes in, the city should allocate some, but not all, of those new dollars to paying for debt service for the proposal described in this. And that ends up being about $80 million a year once it stabilizes in about 2030. But over that same period, the amount of money coming back to the city is significantly higher, something like $300 million per year once we hit year 15. And so there's a lot of money left over, and there's a lot of revenue that can be used for other things in addition to all the things I described. Okay, next slide, please. And so I'll just wrap it up and open it for questions. But there's a lot of times when we're working on policy things and you look at it from one perspective and you say like, okay, this looks great, but then you sort of look at it in a different way, and you can understand how it could be not so great from a different perspective. But with this, the more you look at it, the more benefits there are from it. So for us, this allows us to move away from TIF, which is, as I said, an inherently inequitable and a cumbersome funding source for the city that really means that we can't be as effective as we would like to be. It also addresses complaints from communities who have said that the way TIF functions means that we can't provide resources or we can't provide projects that meet their needs, their greatest needs the most. Also, it's a good governance thing. As I said, this brings us in line with peer cities and the kind of tools that most of our peer cities have and use. With our heavy reliance on TIF to such a significant degree, we're the outlier. And then also, I don't want it to be lost that this provides other taxing bodies with a very significant boost. The numbers I've been talking about are all the city funds and the city funds only, but this will result in a very significant increase to the other taxing bodies, including CPS, who will get something like $5 billion in additional revenue over the next 15 years if this is enacted. But that also extends to the park districts, the library funds, the county, and all of that means additional revenues for those taxing bodies who will be able to either improve services, address longstanding issues, or make new investments. And then this is one meeting among many that I've done on sort of a broad-based effort to engage with the communities and other groups. And so at this point, I think we've done well over 200 briefings among civic groups, nonprofits, community-based developers, for-profit developers, nonprofit developers, you name it. We've been talking to folks, and I think there's been generally overwhelming support, and people understand the benefits that this could bring to not only their community but the city of Chicago as a whole. And that's the meat and potatoes of my presentation.
Great. Okay, so then why don't we open it up for a brief Q&A just for questions about that presentation and questions for Tim before we throw it over to our CPD representative who's here today. So if anybody has questions about that presentation, you can go ahead and use the raise hand feature, or I can read questions from the chat. I'll alternate between the two. Okay, so the first question I see is in the chat. Ivy's asking, how does this impact the ability of alders to approve development projects?
Short answer is I don't think it will change much. Many of the programs that that this bond fund will pay for are going to be existing programs. So they will go through existing pathways about how things are done today. And then to the extent that there are new things that would be funded, and there are going to be new things funded, those would be subject to the approval of council on a move forward base. Like what are the program rules and the regs? Are there any like outside consultants that the city needs to engage to help do the work? All of that would be subject to council oversight. Audrey, I think you're on mute there.
Thanks. I'm not seeing any raised hands. So another question from Ivy, who pays into the bond? Is it impacted by the city's credit rating?
Everybody would pay into the bond, but everybody pays in right now today as well to it. So there would be no functional change to the way that your or my or anyone's property tax bill would look if you were in a TIF district today or not, or when you roll the calendar over, if the existence of TIF wouldn't change it. So if the city issued this, it would be a general obligation bond backed by the full faith and credit of the city of Chicago. So all property taxes, all properties in the entire city would pay towards it. It's the belief of our CFO and several, we went through a protracted due diligence phase on this proposal, including a review by the CFO, and they do not believe that this would impact the city's credit rating. And if anything, this would potentially increase our credit rating, because debt is debt. Debt can be bad, debt can be good. And this is debt, but for the purposes of the credit rating, the credit rating agencies are most interested in persistent, new, like sustainable revenue sources coming back to the city, and allowing many of these TIF districts to expire and then put that money back into the general fund does exactly that. And as I said, it's in many cases, in most years, the amount of money used for this proposal is far smaller than the total amount of money would be generated.
Hey, oh, I see a raised hand. Carrie, go ahead. You could unmute.
Yeah, hi, thank you very much. Was curious all the way back at the beginning of your presentation when you showed the three categories of where funding would be used. Rental improvements, homeownership, and homelessness. And I'm curious as to where those numbers, those figures came from, how they were arrived at, how they either complement one another, or why some are, for example, the rental properties are much, that category is much higher than homelessness, and how they were played out, how we figured one towards the next, and that type of thing, given where we are with these issues right now, particularly.
I think I can at a high level, and I guess I could speak very specifically about the DPD allocations, the DOH ones you're talking about. I would need some colleagues to give me some backup, but at a high level, they were established by just what have been our previous spend on things, and how are we, like, what's the historic benchmarks of our of projects, and that was used to get sort of a how much money has been provided from our sources, and then how many projects are we anticipating on a move forward basis. So for housing, especially the affordable rental, that's also a function of the city's LIHTC awards, how much we get in LIHTC, both in the 4% and 9% track. So this result, that amount of money is just those projects, frankly, like take more money than other things. And so they got a large section of the cash. In terms of home ownership, like, you know, these are existing programs that exist today that will be expanded. And this is what the Department of Housing thought was, you know, could be accomplished in part too, like, you know, given the existing staff and given the existing like ability to serve folks. This is what the departments think we could reasonably pull off based on the work that we're doing today and the work that we want to do.
Okie dokie. It doesn't seem like there are any other raised hands or questions in the chat. If you do end up thinking of a question and you want to share it with us after the fact, we can, you know, get that sorted out later. But with that, we'll probably move on to hear from Lieutenant Magno, unless you have anything to add, Alderwoman.
I just wanted to thank Tim for coming on, and also just want to reiterate what Tim was saying about the TIF program, which is truly inequitable. And so I fully support this program. We do have one TIF that is expiring in the ward, and that has already is winding down, and the rest of them are in the works to also wind down, of course. For instance, on Broadway, we're using TIF to help fund a theater that's coming onto Broadway. And we are in one of the TIF districts, the wards that have TIF districts that are actually generating revenue. But Tim, could you maybe compare what we collect again on the north side here to another ward that is maybe a comparable distance from downtown from us, or to the west of us?
Sure, I can just pull. Hollywood Sheridan is in the ward that currently generates about $3.4 million a year, and goes up over time, obviously. And then, yeah, as I said earlier, you know, you might have projects on 79th Street that generate $700,000 a year. So that's a number I know for sure is the current revenue in Avalon Park Social.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate that. And for somebody who was born on the south side, you know, on 93rd and Gates, I would welcome, you know, on that side of town, more investment. And at the same time, you know, the money that is going to be returned to the TIFs, they are going to, as Tim was saying, benefit our parks, our libraries, and our schools. So thank you again, Tim. If anybody has any other questions, please submit them to us, and then we could follow up with you. And also remember that this recording is going to be available for you to share with friends later on. And Audrey is going to include that on our website and on YouTube. So thanks again, Tim.
Thank you. And let me know if anybody has any questions, happy to answer them.
Okay. All right, then with that, we will pass it over to Lieutenant Magno. Take it away.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, and I apologize ahead of time regarding not having the video feature on my desktop here. However, just a quick breakdown. The 48th ward encompasses essentially the 20th district, our northeast portion of our 20th district, which essentially goes from Lawrence approximately to Thorndale on the north side, and the lakefront east to basically Clark Street. Respectively, there are a total of 9 total beats within the 20th district. However, the beats that encompass the 48th ward are beat 2013, which next has their CAPS community meeting on April 17th, beats 2022 and 23 on May the 9th, and beat 2024 on April 18th. With that being said, we continue to assist in where we can our community and partners in regards to our attempt of moving forward. There's a change in law enforcement to to be more the guardians and ambassadors within our community. We realize that we will never, quote, arrest our way out of some of our social ills and problems that have peaked more recently. So I'll go directly into some of the more quantifiable measurements that are here. Luckily, right now, the 20th district entirely is down 4% in overall index crimes, which include murder, criminal sexual assault, robbery, aggravated battery, burglary, theft, and motor vehicle thefts. Unfortunately, as it affects most of the city, which through legislation, there's legislation going on to affect the utilization of specifically two types of vehicles utilized, and it's been highlighted quite a bit within media coverage, Kias and Hyundais. Those are routinely used in a good majority within property crimes as well as robberies, not just within the 20th district and 48th ward, but additionally citywide. So legislation is moving forward. For those of you that didn't attend the past community meeting, there was, with follow-up with the 48th ward, there was an arrest made, unfortunately, to the murder for our Sen High School student that was closed out approximately 3 weeks ago, I believe. That case is now just going to be adjudicated in the appropriate court of law moving forward. So with that being said, the more highlighted items today, unfortunately, we did experience two robberies, which unfortunately also involved a getaway car with Kia, but with the utilization of our license plate readers, we were able to track the vehicle. Unfortunately, they made good their escape heading southbound. I can't go into great detail in regards to certain ongoing investigations, and I know the Alder's office is kept abreast of as much information as possible as we can provide moving forward. However, there was a Kia that was used early this morning for a robbery that was committed in the 1300 block of Early, as well as 4920 North Marine Drive. Unfortunately, that vehicle and or suspects also committed a robbery within our neighboring district in the 24th district in the 6500 block of North Bell. But we do have some information regarding potential suspects. So hopefully we can make some headway moving forward with the utilization of technology as well as investigative tools that we have available. Now, there is a current burglary pattern that is affecting the 20th district that encompasses 1514 West Ardmore, 5530 North Rockwell, 529 Walcott, 2609 West Gregory, 3000 block of Peterson, 5625 North Tallman, and 2615 block of Albion. Unfortunately, in that case, it's a robberies where the description are multiple offenders, late teens, early 20s that utilize a baton, rifle, or some sort of object to commit their crimes. And taken within there are various items from our victims' credit cards, monetary amounts of money, as well as their personal belongings. In that, the vehicle used, once again, is unfortunately another Kia, which was stolen and reported out of our neighboring district, out of Shakespeare in the Humboldt Park area, reported on the 17th. Now that vehicle was recovered. Unfortunately, then they utilized another stolen vehicle to commit additional. So that current pattern is now being worked on by the detective division because we suspect that the individuals involved there committed approximately 7 of those robberies during that incident. In closing, just on our end here, I apologize ahead of time that I don't have any additional quantifiables that could be measurable there. And in regards to the questions, we can just provide those in response back to the Alder's office in regards to as we do moving forward. And as we continue to also assist with our asylum seekers, we attempt to at least provide them immediate assistance and provide them, and additionally, not just our asylum seekers, but additionally all of our unhoused within the 20th district as well. We try and utilize whatever available facilities we have here and serve as a conduit to get them long-term services as well as immediate care, especially as we deal with a very sensitive and delicate population at times, individuals that don't have immediate access to certain resources. So we attempt to do so by providing them various resources through DFSS, et cetera, as well as through various other non-for-profits that have more come to light. Unfortunately, I'm trying to look through my notes here and see if we have those available, but we try and serve as that conduit, because sometimes we are their first interaction with government within the city of Chicago. With that, I will close that out and move on. Unfortunately, I do have to return to field duty shortly. So thank you very much once again from the 48th Ward, and once again, please continue to invite us as we look forward to being a participant regarding all of our society and city needs within our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lieutenant. I wanted to just thank you and your department for working closely with us in the 48th Ward and in the 40th Ward around the recent homicide of the 11-year-old Jaden Perkins because of domestic violence. And I know that your team and your CAPS team has been good about sending resources to our office regarding domestic violence. And we are also thankful that we see you more out on the street, on the sidewalks and patrolling, especially along Thorndale and in our business corridors, including on Argyle, where I know you get a lot of calls, 911 calls. I would encourage everyone to utilize 911 and call whenever you see something. Please say something, and also just remind us, all of us, that here in the 48th Ward, we have 2 police districts. South of Thorndale, we have the 20th, and then north of Thorndale, we have the 24th. So I just want to say thank you to the 20th district, right, Lieutenant, and keep safe out there, and we hope to have you on again.
Thank you very much, and I'd be remiss to say that I'm glad that at least within the 20th district, we have a good rapport and working relationship with our elected officials. Sometimes after leaving intergovernmental, that wasn't always the case, but I always look forward, at least me personally, to being someone that's grown up for over half a century plus in this city and has worked from the far west side to the far south side. Our contributions just go without being said, but it truly has become a partnership here, at least within the 20th and within the 48th, 47th, as well as in Alderman Martin, but as well as Andre Vasquez on the west end there. But thank you very much, and continue to utilize our community relations office as well as directly. I know you have a direct relationship with the real commander of the district, but I don't mind sitting in and contributing where we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I also do want to remind us that, part of what our challenge in the 48th Ward is that we have a lot of public transit. And so we're working really closely, not only with CPD, but also with the CTA, to find ways that our students and also actually anybody who uses the CTA can feel more safe. So it's not just getting there, but it's also the ride to and from work, or to and from school, or to and from a temporary shelter. Everybody deserves to have safety, moving, walking, and taking transit around the city. So I appreciate all that you're doing towards that end. I wanted to, if it's okay with you, Audrey, move on, and I wanted to introduce a constituent here on the call, Carrie Fleming from One North Side, who's been a community leader for a very long time, especially around the issue of houselessness. And we just had an election on March 19th, and I want to thank everyone here who's listening for getting out the votes. The 48th Ward topped the charts. We were number 2, I believe, after the 47th Ward in terms of voter turnout. So we know that voting is really the cornerstone of a strong democracy, and I wanted to appreciate you for that. But the other thing that I wanted to lift up is all the work that has been done by individuals and grassroots, and especially One North Side leading the way to talk about the crisis that we have right now, which is housing and houselessness. And I will give it to Carrie to give us an update on all the work that was done towards that end in this election cycle.
Thank you, Alderwoman. I appreciate you letting me speak. I don't know how much you want me to say, so cut me off if I get too verbose. In our area, 48th Ward in particular, but all of One North Side being the organizing organization that works on such things as this, which goes from basically Lincoln Park all the way up to about the border with Evanston, and from the lake to the river, east to west. We did do particularly well. Lenny just said that 48th was number 2, so yay for us in 48. I appreciate all the work, and I too appreciate everybody getting out and getting the vote out. We, and by we I mean One North Side, but also the broad coalition that has worked on this since its inception about early 2018, are still sifting through the rubble. All of us on this call know that we fell short of the vote that we wanted on March 19th. We're still attempting to understand how that came about, why it came about, and more importantly, what to learn from that and how to take that into what we do in the future. Because one thing we know for certain is we're not giving up on this. A couple of things I just want to say. There was a capacity issue with a lot of the orgs that worked in this. Capacity issue with getting the vote out, not again so much in our ward, but across the city. It was this extremely low turnout, and of those that turned out, and again, not in our wards, but in some of the other wards, people who voted didn't necessarily vote on the question. That's tantamount to a no vote when you're looking at it that way. So there's some work to be done there. There's also a messaging problem. Sadly to say, the people with the money, our opposition, can pay to have their message, lies though it is, get out in a broader and better way than we are capable of doing. And again, sadly, a lot of people who aren't involved in this stuff all the time believe those lies because they don't know enough. So our messaging around the education around this needs to be sharpened however we go into this the next time. So that's one of the pieces we need to learn. One of the things that we are hearing the most about, again, the coalition throughout the city, that was creeping up on us towards the election and on election day, was the sad fact, not without merit from people, that people just don't trust city council, the government broad, city council in general, Mayor Johnson in particular, to spend the money the way it says it's going to be spent. They just don't have that trust, and there are decades of reasons why they would have that mistrust. I'm not giving an opinion on whether I think it's right or wrong. It is the fact. That's what we're hearing. Again, that goes to messaging and how we move forward. And I think the last thing I'll say is that we did this as a ballot measure. Ballot measures are notoriously and historically difficult to achieve. If any of you remember a fair tax, we had a similar problem there. We won it in the city, but we lost it in the state. This was a city issue. We won it in our area. We lost it in other parts of the city, but for the same sort of reason. So we're looking at how we move forward. Alderwoman may have some city council information on what's to be seen next that I don't have. But as organizations, we're looking at what we can do differently, what we can look better, what we can look at better, how we can get a better message out, and how we can do better education around the issues, particularly when you have, 4-paragraph ballot language that the state made us have, which people are just confused, even those who might have voted on it. So there are a lot of different ways that we can improve on it. Again, we're not giving up. One North Side and 48th Ward in particular did well, but the last thing I'll stress is that however we move forward, whatever we do, and we will be moving forward. The thing we need more than anything else is more boots on the ground, more people on the phones, more people on the doors, more people out doing presentations, educating folks on why this is important, why it's needed. I think everybody knows that, you know, homelessness, houselessness is a problem. Not everybody's agreed on how we should go about doing it. We need to come up with a better solution, and we need to get the education out so that next time around we win instead of fall short as we did before. Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. And I just wanted to shout out to One Northside and your membership, and also that to acknowledge that your group is, you know, led by those who've been really impacted by houselessness, right? And so,
Yes.
yeah, did you want to speak more on that?
Yeah, well, actually, thank you for bringing that up. You know, I will say, and I wasn't going to give opinion, this was unfairly, all this Bring Chicago Home thing was unfairly linked as Brandon Johnson's thing. He did run on it. It was his major plank, but it was around a long time before he became mayor. The last administration ran on it too, and then didn't like the way we wanted to spend the money, and so they said, no, sorry. But it originated back in 2018 by people with lived experience of houselessness who said, we have to do something about this. It wasn't politicians that did it. It wasn't elected leaders. It wasn't a mayor. It was people with lived experience who said, this has to be changed. We have to find a way to change this so we don't have a million tents in the park and people living under underpasses and doubling up with everybody they can think of. So yes, in our ward and in our group with One Northside, that's what originated too. A lot of the people who were out on the streets were people living with lived experience, but it originated there. It has always been by and from those individuals. It will continue to be with the support of elected officials and who will get behind us and continue to support and help make this get through the channels it needs to get through.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, Carrie. So please Google One Northside, or maybe Carrie, you could put something into the chat so people can follow you all's work, because we still have to address houselessness across the 48th ward. There are many tents along the lakefront, and we are doing all that we can with DFSS with these rapid rehousing events, moving events. And it's not enough, because we don't have enough places for folks to stay, and the shelters are, you know, they're temporary, right? They're not meant for people to stay there for long periods of time or permanently. We want people to live in dignified ways, and if it's not going to be done through Bring Chicago Home and the increase in the real estate transfer tax, then we need to do it in different ways. And so that's the reason why the bond program is going to be so important to work with you know, Department of Housing and Department of Planning and Development, so that we can actually plan and do some things together. And in the 48th ward, we look forward to working with the new Commissioner of Planning and Development. Commissioner Boatwright was in the ward within the last week, and took a tour and saw our beautiful lakefront, and also saw those that were living in tents along the lakefront. She also saw the red and purple modernization project that's soon to wrap up in the next 2 years. And she also saw the empty lots of land that are going to be available once CTA is done with their construction. And we are pointing to that land and saying, you know, that, you know, on Broadway between Bryn Mawr and Hollywood, wouldn't that look great as, you know, housing that we can actually afford to live in? You know, because we want people to stay in our ward, including our students, including those who are working class families. We want families to stay in our ward. We actually need more people to live in our ward so that we can have and continue our very vibrant business corridors along Broadway, Thorndale, you know, Granville, and Argyle and Clark Street. But we need more people, and we need more people to stay, and we need more people to work in those small businesses too. So we're looking forward to working with our commissioners, our new commissioners, towards that end. And we're also looking to our public spaces too, including Bazazian Library, which is in Uptown, part of our ward, which hasn't seen an upgrade in a long time. It's one of our oldest libraries. And it's also one of our most utilized, even for the smallness of it. And that we also have Edgewater Library too, which could also use a lot of investment because it's very well used. And then speaking of public places, we are looking forward to Broadway Armory coming back available to the community for our regular programming. And that is in the works. We hope to hear more from the park districts about how you can sign up for programming in the summertime. And this week, we also want to assure you that those that have been living in the ward at the Broadway Armory are still being taken care of. We're very proud of our ward for stepping up and for the Broadway Armory to be used to temporarily house our new neighbors. They have been followed by caseworkers so that they can get the resources that they need if they're seeking asylum. If they're looking for work, they need work authorization. And they have also been families, so they've been going to our public schools. And so within the next week, we will see movement from the Broadway Armory. Folks are going to be moving to the closest temporary shelters to us, including in the 46th ward and also west of us in the 39th ward, so that they can stay close to the public schools that they've been going to, including Swift and Sen. And so that will be happening this week, slowly but surely. And also wanted to shout out to those who have been involved with the Broadway Armory Advisory Council. So as we're bringing the Park District Fieldhouse back online, we also want to make sure that the community is heard to hear what you would like to see at the Broadway Armory in terms of programming, in terms of services, in terms of our senior programs and our youth programs. So please keep in touch with us so that you can be a part of that conversation. And at this time, I want to make sure that we are addressing all the questions that still might be lingering out there. And I also wanted to thank you all for, again, joining us today. Remember that this is recorded, so it's going to be available to you after we close out this meeting. And also keep sending us your questions and also your interest in what you want us to address in future meetings. And I'll hand it to Audrey.
All right, so we are just about out of time, actually. And so I want to be respectful of everybody's time and end the meeting as close to 6 as possible, but maybe we can take 1 to 2 questions here in the meeting. And then from there, you can send your questions either through the Q&A feature in Zoom or in the chat so that we have record of them. But that being said, if you have an urgent request or a question you need an answer to, like let's say within the week, do contact us at info@the48thward.org. I'm going to put that in the chat because our neighborhood services team are a bunch of superstars and they will get back to you super quickly. And you can also call our office number. I will put all of our office info in the chat in just a moment. So if you have an urgent request, contact us there. If you have sort of like a larger question you'd like us to address in a future meeting, send it in the chat, put it in the Q&A, and we'll look at it after the fact. But yeah, if people want to ask 1 or 2 questions, go for it. Raise your hand and I'll call on you. Otherwise, thank you for being here. Thank you so much. Yeah, Maggie, go ahead.
Thank you so much. And I did put this in the chat, but just while I have him, I was wondering if Lieutenant Magno could comment on anything that's being done to patrol the area between Ainsley, Margate, and McCutcheon. I saw those suspects this morning and presumed that they were intending to rob me. Someone mentioned in the chat that their neighbor saw them and made eye contact with them, so they thankfully did not rob me. But it sounds like there was lots of activity in the area. So I'm just wondering if there's anything that's being done tonight, tomorrow morning, given the concentration of events. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. I can tell you that this morning, in regards to the response to the robberies that occurred today, that we do believe, at least preliminarily, that they may be connected, the connected offenders. That there was an immediate response, not just by our uniformed marked officers, but we had plainclothes uniformed officers respond. Additionally, also to quote unquote saturate the area moving forward. Traditionally, our plan is to continue to do so as well, and to partner with our various use of intelligence as well as technology with, as I stated earlier, without divulging too much of an ongoing investigation. Utilization of license plate readers, et cetera, is additional in regards to also, as I stated here earlier, our quote boots on the ground regarding our personnel. So we will continue to actually monitor the situation, and with as much availability, continue to saturate the area with as much both to mitigate it as much as we can with uniformed officers, but additionally to an attempt to apprehend suspects by utilization of not just our uniform, but plainclothes officers as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, we can take one more question if anybody's got a question that they want answered right now. I am putting our office info in the chat so that you can see how to contact us via email and phone. You can also visit us in person. Our office is on Bryn Mawr.
I'll address the question that Ivy has in the chat about the efforts to build more affordable housing in the ward. So we are looking forward to a development at the Streets and Sand lot, which is right next to the Broadway Armory on Broadway, just south of the Broadway Armory. And so that lot is going to be developed into affordable housing through Bickerdike. We expect at least 90 units there, and hopefully we'll see that progress very soon. They just got awarded LIHTC dollars, so this is in the works and very excited. I'm told that when it was first proposed to the community years ago, there was a standing ovation. So we're very excited to have Bickerdike's development in the 48th ward.
I'm gonna work on pulling up a our blog post about that and sending that in the chat. But yeah, I think we'll end Q&A there. I'll be sending a few more links in the chat if you want to hang out for those. But then meeting recording, chat, transcript, everything will be available within the week on our blog and our YouTube channel. So yeah, that's it, everybody. I'll let Alderwoman Manaa-Hoppenworth close us out.
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Carrie, for joining ad hoc, and everybody for bringing your questions. Thank you, Lieutenant Magno, our Night Commander, for keeping us safe and for continuing to work with us and be great partners to all of us in the community. Have a great night, everybody.